Welcome into the Bonesville Pregame Podcast. Al Myatt, joined by Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, outstanding defensive back in his playing days at East Carolina, that 1990 team that was so illustrious, celebrated their 25th anniversary last year. Kevin, a big part of that. And Kevin, you played in some NC State games over the years. That's who the Pirates opened the 2025 season with. And that'll be in Raleigh Thursday night, 7 p.m. kickoff. And it's going to be a rematch, and so to speak, of the Military Bowl, which East Carolina won 26-21 December 28th in Annapolis, Maryland. An 86-yard touchdown run by Rahjai Harris to kind of put the icing on the cake in terms of his career, and then an interception by Dontavius Nash seal that outcome. But it's going to be no shortage of emotion, I don't think, in terms of the Pirates going to play NC State on Thursday night.
Yeah, Al, just a lot of things tied into this one. You mentioned briefly my career, and I played at East Carolina from 95 to 99, and it came down to NC State and East Carolina as to where I was going to go to school. And East Carolina and Coach Logan came in my living room and sat down and offered me a scholarship before NC State did. And so I always remembered that. And when State came and finally offered me, I had already made my decision to go to East Carolina. And so as I went to school, we ended up playing them in 96 in Charlotte. That was the big Scott Harley game where he had a bunch of yards on them, and we won that one. And 97 was at NC State, and Torrey Holt took a screen pass down the sideline for about 85 yards for a touchdown. They beat us in that game, I think, by a score or so. And then 1999 to close out my career. Obviously, everybody knows about that game. Jamie Barnett was the quarterback. It was the game that made Coach Logan the winningest coach in East Carolina history. Jamie Barnett was the quarterback of NC State, and Corn Robinson was their star receiver. And so they had some good players, and we won that game. There at home in Dowdy-Ficklen was, at the time, it was the largest crowd in Dowdy-Ficklen history. So, yeah, 2-1 against NC State in my career, and just a good feeling to have that happen. And fast forward, it was awesome to see the Pirates and Rahjai Harris win that bowl game just last year. I mean, gosh, it's been like 6 months ago. It really hadn't even been a whole year. And so I think there'll be a lot of excitement, a lot of things going into this game. Several guys returning, several guys gone. So it'll be a new look for both those teams, but same coaching staffs for the most part, and just a lot of excitement around this game.
Both quarterbacks return, Caden Hauser for ECU and C.J. Bailey for NC State. And, those are good pieces to build around when you've lost some players, to have your quarterback returning. East Carolina has a good stable of running backs: Marlon Gunn Jr., London Montgomery, and a Houston transfer, Parker Jenkins. That's kind of X factor in terms of what he may do for the Pirates. We haven't seen him, but the fact that he's coming from a Power 4 program and he started some for the Cougars speaks highly of his potential. And then, of course, you've got Anthony Smith, and this is kind of a unique game for him. He's returning to a field where he played a lot of his career at NC State, and he was certainly a big factor in East Carolina averaging 37 points last year after averaging 17 the year before. That's a testimony to John David Baker and the effectiveness of Caden Hauser, ultimately at quarterback when he became the starter as Blake Harrell transitioned to head coach last year. But, when you've got some skilled personnel returning, then it becomes a question of how effectively your offensive front can perform to enable those skilled people to do what they do.
Yeah, I think the biggest factor for this season is going to be the fact that Caden Hauser came into the season as the starter. It wasn't challenged this time. There wasn't Garcia around to take snaps away. And so the confidence factor that you get in the preseason from being the guy and then heading into summer camp and fall camp, it's just different. Everybody treats you differently. You build that mentality that, hey, I'm the guy. And we saw as the season ended last year how good he could be. And so super excited to see him come into this season. You mentioned some of his weapons. Anthony Smith, one of the fastest guys on the team. He's the deep ball threat. excuse me, Yannick Smith, is a bigger body, catches the ball well with his hands, is good after the catch. He's going to be the other outside threat. They've also got a transfer in Jaquez Petaway, who played at Oklahoma and is a good player that they're excited about. Of course, Brock Spalding is back reinstated and is going to get some action probably. He's the kind of slot guy and also lines up outside wide. So definitely have those threats. The receiver position, all those guys returning except for the transfer. And then you mentioned the running back situation. We've seen what Montgomery and Gunn can do. Montgomery is more of a bigger, more powerful back, and Gunn is a quicker kind of scat back. And then, as you mentioned, the kid coming in from Houston, Jenkins, who's a playmaker himself and has some starts. And all three of those guys on the Doak Walker watch list coming into the season. So they're expecting big things out of those guys. So offensively, to have all those guys returning, as you mentioned, the biggest question mark is the offensive line. You don't really have, I think Emmanuel Poku is the only one. One of the only ones that started some games last year. There may be one other, but most of those guys are new transfers or guys that didn't get a chance to play a whole lot last year. So that's the biggest component of it is to kind of piece those guys together and see what they can do up front. I know John David Baker has really been focusing a lot on that in the preseason of getting those guys comfortable and playing well together. And I think they'll be fine because, this whole offense is built on just getting the ball out fast and finding those receivers, getting balls to running backs. And so offensive linemen don't have to hold for a long time. And you mentioned the points they put up last year. As the season went on and Coach Harrell became the head coach, what they were able to do offensively was pretty impressive. And those wins they were able to get was due large in part to that offense and how successful they were. So very excited to see what they can do starting things out on Thursday night.
And, of course, you mentioned Garcia, and that contributed to a very high turnover ratio last year. He made some big plays, but he threw some interceptions too. And interesting thing about Jake is he's now in the program at Michigan. He's kind of a backup insurance policy to the true freshman there, Bryce Underwood, that's going to be starting for the Wolverines. And I think, Kevin, all in all, NC State's a challenge, but you'd rather go to Raleigh than you would to Ann Arbor, Michigan to start a season like the Pirates did a couple of years ago.
That's right.
You covered the offense very well, and you're a defensive guy. Let's talk about that defensive front. J.D. Lampley, I'm glad he's been reinstated, and I hope those guys have learned a lesson about how you have to conduct yourself under the spotlight of playing major college football. But he's certainly a valuable asset to the defense. Raheem Craig, returning starter, and you've got some more pieces to build around in terms of Blake Harrell's defense as it transitions to coordinator Josh Aldridge.
Yeah, Zion Wilson is going to be the new nose tackle there in the middle, and so he'll be in the middle of Lampley and Craig. Big guy, so we'll be able to be a stalwart in the middle there to hopefully stop the run. Linebacker is where things get a little dicey because all these guys are for the most part new, except for Sam Danko playing on the outside. But Jonathan John and Damian Wilson are both newer guys to playing a lot, and so we'll see how they factor in. The defensive backfield is what I know a whole lot about, and I'm excited to have Jamali Riddle back. He was a playmaker last year as a freshman. Was getting after it, had some interceptions, made some plays, but now he's coming back as one of the leaders back there. Lots of confidence. The players kind of look up to him and his ability to make plays. Tegan Wilk, who left the program and then came back, is going to be starting at the other safety. But then you have two new guys at corner, Rasheem Reason and Jordy Lowy. So excited to see both these guys play because, the corner is a position where you don't necessarily want to have inexperience. And some of these guys are transfers, so they're not necessarily inexperienced, but, first time playing for East Carolina and in this kind of environment at NC State. And so this will be exciting for them, getting them to get used to this rivalry. And you hope that they settle in quickly and use the help from those two experienced safeties to make plays. But in a game like this, you just gotta stay deep, make sure nothing gets behind you. And I expect these guys to be well coached. With the new defense coordinator coming in and make some decisions. But as you mentioned, having Blake Harrell there as the defense coordinator, for the past several years is going to be huge. and the helps of getting this defense going, because there's no doubt in my mind that the offense is going to be well ahead of the defense to start the season off, just because there's so many good players returning offensively. Quarterback's back, your running backs are back, your star receivers are back, and so they'll be clicking, and that's what we've seen in the first few scrimmages this preseason, is that the offense has been ahead of the defense. But the thing about defense is it's not so much X's and O's, it's about effort. And so once guys get running around and getting after that football, making some plays, I think that would be contagious, and I think they'll get better and better as the season goes on.
Kevin, if you would, talk a little bit about what's important on playing on the road and specifically at NC State.
Yeah, I mean, well, the good news is at NC State, there'll be a lot of Pirate fans. So it's not like playing on the road at Michigan or on the road somewhere, BYU or somewhere where it's hard for Pirate fans to get to. It's just far away. There'll be a nice contingency of Pirate fans, but it is going to be in a hostile environment. I mean, this is probably the first time I can think of that there's been definitely more pressure on the Wolfpack than on the Pirates. Every time they come into a game like this, I think the Pirates feel the pressure to win, feel the pressure to show people they're as good as those ACC teams, for recruiting purposes. You always feel like you have to win this game. Now the Pirates are coming in, maybe not the favorites, but they're coming in as the winners from last year. Dave Doran can't afford to lose to the Pirates 2 times in a row. CJ Bailey and those guys that were on that team last year for NC State have felt that feeling of losing. They got in a fight. They felt embarrassed about that. So all the pressure is on them to come out and win this football game. And so I think that'll ease some of that, weariness for the Pirates. And going in this game, they'll be excited. They'll also want to win. But I think the pressure's on the Wolfpack. So going into this stadium, hostile environment, you got to be calm. You can't let the intensity, the adrenaline get after you too quickly, because you'll get nervous and you get tired quickly. You just have to go in, be calm, act like it's a home game, and just go out and play your game.
Kevin, we're 3 years removed from one of the most disappointing outcomes in East Carolina football history, a missed kick and late in the game in Greenville. And East Carolina has 3 kickers. Coach Blake Harrell didn't name a starter at his news conference on Monday, but, the kicking game comes down. You got Andrew Conrad, who's made some big kicks for the Pirates. You got Noah Perez with some experience. And there's another challenger in that mix. And
Nick Mazie.
You have that on the depth chart there. So that obviously could play a factor in this game Thursday night.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we see Andrew Conrad. With Andrew, I think it was a confidence thing for whatever reason. He was so good earlier in his career. As a freshman, he made some huge kicks, won a couple games. And just really struggled last year. And so I think he has to get his confidence back. He still has a good leg and can make plays, but now he's got Noah Perez and Nick Mazie ahead of him. And Perez, we saw, I don't think has as big a leg as Conrad, but he was pretty accurate, made the majority of his extra points, hit a couple field goals from medium distances. But they like Mazie a lot. He's 6'2", 228. He's a transfer. He's a senior. So he's got a lot of experience. So I expect that we'll probably see him early on and see how he does. And if he's consistent, I think they go with him.
Kevin, punting, of course, Luke Larson has been back there for a number of years, the 37-year-old punter from Australia. And that's going to be new personnel there. Punting game, very important. Blake Harrell, kind of old school, talking about winning the field position game at his news conference on Monday. But as you know, it's nice to go out there after a 60 or 65-yard punt in terms of field position.
Yeah, Ryan Levy or Thomas O'Halloran, who both are new guys to being a starting kicker, starting punter at East Carolina. So we'll see which one gets the nod and how they do. I do think that field position is everything. I played alongside the best punter in East Carolina history in Andrew Bays, and he set us up tons of times with great field position because of the way he would pin guys deep or kick the ball to the sideline and not let great returners get an opportunity to change the ball game. And so, yeah, you can't afford to just hang that ball up in the air, or you can't afford you'd like to have a high kicks, but you can't afford to have short kicks. And then you can't afford to kick these line drives and give these guys an opportunity to get going before the coverage guys get down there. So hopefully We'll see which one of them comes out and which one of them was able to shine in preseason and makes their mark. But it's going to come down to the coverage team too. And that was a big factor in my career, is always covering punts. And it's all about effort, as I talked about, with anything with defense related, is getting down there and pinning those guys in deep and helping out your offense by changing the field position. So we'll see how the punting game goes, but we'll definitely see a new guy out there on Thursday night.
Kevin, it looks like the weather's going to be pretty good for this time of year. Preseason camp started with temperatures in the 90s. They had to work around some rain showers earlier in the month, but it looks like upper 70s for kickoff in Raleigh on Thursday night. So that will be a blessing, not having to deal with extreme heat, I think. But let's talk about that Bonesville tradition, Kevin's keys to the game.
I think anytime you're on the road, you have to find a way to come out, take the crowd out of the game, and get on the board first. So the first key is going to be for Caden Hauser in this offense to strike early and often. So I think, yes, you want to establish the run, but you got to take some shots. And see if you can get Anthony Smith downfield, see if you can get Yannick Smith downfield. Find a way to get a big play early on in that game and get some points on the board. I think is going to be huge to begin this football game, and try to be the first to score and maybe get a couple scores on the board before State does to get that crowd out of the game. Secondly, on offense, you gotta run the football. It's always going to be one in the trenches. It's going to start with the offensive line play, because you have to be able to run the football with Montgomery and Gunn. We talked about those guys, and then the third guy in Jenkins and his ability. So establishing that run early on is going to help to move the chains. It's going to help to keep the State offense off the field. And so that's going to be huge in this ball game. And then lastly, CJ Bailey is just such a talent as an NC State quarterback. So containing him, not letting him get outside the pocket, run around a little bit, but also the longer he scrambles, the better he gets throwing the ball downfield. So you gotta cover deep back there and make sure you're maintaining your coverages when he gets moving around. But containing CJ Bailey, trying to make him one-dimensional, make him find his receivers, and not just prolong plays and make these ESPN Sports Center type plays on us back there in the secondary. So being tough in the back end and closing that pocket down on CJ Bailey would be my last key.
Very good. Very insightful as always. And Kevin, I want our viewers to be aware that you've got some great family news to pass along, that some of your genes have passed on to the next generation. And tell us about son Marcus and son Butter.
Yeah, so Marcus, first and foremost, my wife played a huge part in this. She played a huge part in the recruiting process period, but he's committed to play football at Stanford, and we're pretty excited about it. It's a very tough university to get into academically, and so my wife, being a smart one in the family, she helped out with that. Those part of the genes, but yeah, he's going to go there and play tight end. He had 14 Division I offers. And Stanford was the best one, and we're just so excited for him and his opportunity. So he's finishing up his senior year. Just started his senior year at North Raleigh Christian Academy. They're 1-0. They won their first game this past week, and so we look forward to a good season, just staying healthy and being ready to go to Stanford in June. And then Butter. So Derek Butter Monroe is my youngest. He's a true freshman, and this guy is the real deal. I mean, he's a heck of a talent. He's 6'1", 170 as a freshman in high school. He's starting on the varsity at green level as a receiver and as a safety, but he's also doing return duties for the team. And his first first high school touch this past week, he took a punt 78 yards for a touchdown. So we're excited to see what he can do and where he'll end up. If he can stay healthy, we hope that he can follow in his brother's footsteps and play Division I football as well. Very good, Kevin, and enjoyed visiting with you on the Bonesville Pregame Podcast as always. And looking forward to next week. Sounds good. Appreciate it, Al.